Most parents today want to be their kid's best friend. They don't want to hurt his feelings, so they soften the hard edges. They explain instead of expect. They let it slide just this once. A father in 1960 wanted the opposite of a friend. He wasn't trying to be liked. He was trying to build a man who would turn out better than he was. And he was willing to be the bad guy for 18 years to do it. And here is what nobody tells you about that. He almost never taught with a speech. He handed the boy a hammer, pointed at the job, and expected it done right the second time. The lesson was the work, the standard, and the look on his face when you fell short of it. And that look taught more than any talk ever could. He wasn't raising a happy child. He was raising a man other people could one day lean on, the way a tradesman trains an apprentice, by repetition and correction, until the thing became part of the boy. That is the one principle this whole list is going to prove. It wasn't advice. It was apprenticeship. These weren't lessons a boy was told. They were standards installed so early and so steadily that he carried them for life without ever calling them lessons at all. And almost all of them have vanished, traded for a gentler kind of parenting that's afraid to ask anything hard. 25 of them, counted down, with the one that holds the entire thing together saved for the very end. Stay to the last 5, because the lesson underneath all the others doesn't show up until then. And once you see it, you'll understand why so many men today feel like something was never handed to them. Number 25. The handshake. Before a boy could read a clock, his father had drilled 3 things into his right hand. Grip firm. Look the man in the eye. Say your own name. A limp hand or a dropped gaze got corrected on the spot, sometimes right in front of the man you just failed to greet. By 6 or 7, most boys could shake hands like they meant it. Here's the strange part. That grip was telling the truth about the boy's whole body. A study following more than 140,000 adults across 17 countries found that grip strength predicted early death better than blood pressure did. And a review of 42 studies tied a weak grip to a 67% higher risk of dying early. The handshake isn't just manners. It's a readout of the man. The fathers had none of that research. They just observed that the boy with the firm hand got treated like he belonged. The hand was the introduction. Everything else was the follow-up. Number 24. Look an adult in the eye and answer for yourself. When a grown man asked a 1960s boy a question, the boy answered, not the mother, not a mumble at the floor. Eyes up, a clear yes sir or no sir, and a real answer in his own voice. A father would stop the whole conversation and make the boy say it again until it came out straight. It mattered because the voice is a status signal, and a boy who could speak clearly to an authority figure was practicing command of himself under pressure. Communication coaches now charge grown men good money to learn exactly this: eye contact and a steady answer, because so many never got it. The fathers taught it for free by refusing to accept anything less. They didn't call it executive presence. They just called it Manners. A boy who could look you in the eye was already halfway to being trusted. Number 23. How to use his hands. A boy in the 1960s was handed real tools at a young age. A claw hammer, a wrench, a Barlow pocket knife, and a job that actually had to get done, not a toy version of it. He learned to swing, measure, and cut by doing it badly and then doing it again under a father's eye. This is what scientists call procedural memory, skills stored in the body through repetition, the same way you never forget how to ride a bike. A tool learned by hand at age 8 stays for 60 years. Studies of how people pick up skills keep finding the same thing. Hands-on practice builds far tougher competence than instruction alone. The fathers didn't read the studies. They just knew a boy learns a tool by holding it, not by hearing about it. A useless pair of hands was something a father took personally. Number 22. Money is something you handle, not something you feel. Long before a boy had a wallet, his father showed him the system. A quarter a week for chores, some of it into a passbook savings account at the bank downtown before a cent got spent. And you don't owe another man if you can help it. The boy watched his father pay for things in cash, in full, counting it out. That mattered because handling real money creates what researchers call the pain of paying, a felt cost that cards and screens erase. When gas was a quarter a gallon and a loaf of bread was 20 cents, a boy who counted out coins understood the weight of a dollar. They had no behavioral science department. They just noticed that the boy who watched the money leave learned to respect it. You don't teach thrift with a lecture. You teach it with a jar. Number 21. Work before you're asked. In a 1960s household, the chores were not optional, and they were not renegotiated for cash every time. The lawn behind a push-reel mower, the trash, the coal or the wood, the dishes. They were a boy's share of a home he belonged to, and he was expected to see the work and do it without being told twice. Underneath it was ownership. A boy who acts on a job before being prompted is building initiative, the exact trait every employer and every wife will later prize, and most people never develop. Studies that followed children into adulthood found that early chores predicted later success and independence better than almost anything else measured. The fathers ran that experiment in every home in America without knowing it. The boy who waited to be told became the man who waited to be told. Number 20. Fix it before you replace it. When something broke in a 1960s home, the first move was the workbench, not the store. A father showed the boy how to take a thing apart, find the failure, and put it back together. A lamp, a fence, even a flat tire on a Schwinn that cost $70 new, back when a whole car ran about $2,600. Replacing things was a last resort, and a wasteful one. This built more than thrift. It built what engineers call a systems mind, the habit of seeing how the parts of a thing connect and where they fail. A boy who fixed the lamp learned that most problems are understandable and most things are repairable, including ones that are not made of metal. They did not frame it that way. They just hated to throw out a thing that had life left in it. A man who can fix the lamp rarely panics over the rest. Number 19, how to lose. Every 1960s boy lost at marbles, at sandlot ball, at cards, in the schoolyard, and his father watched how he did it. Sulking, quitting, blaming the other boy, all of it got named and corrected. You shake the winner's hand, keep your face steady, and go practice. It mattered because losing well is emotional control under defeat, the rarest and most useful thing a competitor can own. A boy who could lose without coming apart could take risks the fragile boy never would. We'd call it resilience now. They called it being a good sport, and they meant something dead serious by it. The boy who could lose well was the man who could try again. Number 18, stand your ground. A father in the 1960s didn't want a bully for a son, but he wanted even less a boy who could be shoved around. So he taught the basics in the garage. How to make a fist, how to take a hit, when to walk away, and when you simply couldn't. A lot of boys learned a little boxing from a father or an uncle and a bag hung from a rafter. It worked on two levels. The skill was real, but the bigger effect was on the boy's bearing. A boy who knows he can defend himself stands differently, and that quiet confidence prevents most fights before they start. People who study conflict will tell you targets get picked by posture. The fathers had no data on that. They just knew a boy who wasn't afraid was rarely tested. He taught the son to fight, so the son would rarely have to. Number 17, your word is a debt. When a boy in the 1960s said he would do something, his father held him to it like a contract. Show up when you said you would, finish what you started, and never promise what you do not mean to deliver. Breaking your word was treated as a small theft, because in a town where everyone knew everyone, that was exactly what it was. The mechanism is reputation, the quiet ledger a community keeps on every man. A boy who kept his word built credit he would draw on for life, in work, in love, in standing. Sociologists call it social capital. The fathers called it being a man of your word, and it was the most valuable thing a man owned. A promise was not talk. It was something you paid. Number 16, early is on time. The 1960s father had a hard clock. If a thing started at 8, you were there at 1:45. On time was already a little late, and late was an insult to the other man's day. A boy who dawdled learned it the hard way, usually by being left in the driveway exactly once. Punctuality worked, because it's the simplest proof of respect and self-command. A signal you send before you speak. A man who's early has told you he can run his own life. Researchers tie it to conscientiousness, one of the strongest predictors of success there is. The fathers didn't measure conscientiousness. They just couldn't stand a man who made people wait. Being early was how you apologized in advance for nothing. Number 15, look like you respect yourself. A father from the 1960s made sure his son left the house presentable, shirt tucked, hair combed with a dab of Brill cream, shoes hit with a tin of kiwi polish, face that had seen soap. Not to be vain, the opposite. To show the world the boy had himself in order before he asked the world for anything. The principle is that grooming signals self-respect, and people hand respect to those who clearly hold it for themselves. A put-together boy was read as a disciplined boy and treated that way. Studies on appearance confirm grooming quietly shifts how others judge competence and trust. The fathers had no studies. They had a mirror by the door and a rule about using it. How a boy kept his collar told you how he would keep his word. Number 14. How to behave in front of others. There was a code for public, and a 1960s father drilled it. Hat off indoors. Stand when a lady or an elder enters. Don't talk with your mouth full. Lower your voice in a restaurant. Hold the door. Not suggestions. The operating manual for moving through the world without shaming your family. Manners worked because they're consideration in shorthand. A fast way to show strangers you've accounted for them. A boy with manners was welcome everywhere, and a welcome boy got chances the rude boy never saw. They didn't call it social intelligence. They called it knowing how to behave, and a boy who forgot heard about it on the ride home. Manners were just respect, made visible to strangers. Number 13. How to treat a woman. A father, in the 1960s, modeled and enforced a clear set of moves. Open the door, walk on the street side of the sidewalk, stand when she stands, speak with respect, and never, ever raise a hand. Whatever else has rightly changed since then, the core was a posture of protection and courtesy. What the boy absorbed was that strength exists to be spent in someone else's favor, not against them. A boy who learned to be gentle on purpose learned the difference between power and force. Relationship researchers now build their whole field on respect and emotional safety. The fathers had a shorter line. You treat her like a lady, and a real man always does. He taught the boy that gentleness was a choice only the strong could make. Now, everything so far, the handshake, the shined shoes, the manners, that was the surface. Useful, but the surface. The lessons that actually built the man, the ones almost nobody teaches a boy anymore, start now and run all the way to number 1. So stay with me, because this is where it gets good. Number 12, hold your temper. A boy in the 1960s was taught that a man feels anger and does not have to obey it. Take the insult, count, breathe, answer level, or do not answer at all. The father who blew up himself was the exception that proved the rule. And the rule was that losing control meant losing the argument. This is self-control. The same thing those famous Stanford experiments of the late 1960s measured when they sat small children in front of a marshmallow and told them to wait. The kids who could pause between wanting and grabbing did better for years afterward. A boy who could hold his temper held the high ground in every fight. The fathers ran no experiments. They just knew the man who keeps his head when others lose theirs ends up running the room. A short fuse, they knew, was a short career. Number 11. Take care of what carries you. When a 1960s boy got near the family car, that $2,600 machine, his father made sure he understood it. Check the oil, change a tire, listen for the noise that means trouble, wash it on Saturday. A thing that carried your family was not something you simply used and ignored. The lesson under the lesson was stewardship, the duty to maintain what you depend on before it fails. A boy who maintained the car learned to maintain the marriage, the house, the body, the friendships, all the things that break quietly when neglected. Engineers call it preventive maintenance. The fathers called it taking care of your things, and they meant all of them. The boy who checked the oil became the man who checked on everyone. Number 10. A man provides. The 1960s father passed down one duty above almost all the practical ones. You will be expected to earn, to put food on a table, to be the one others lean on when the money's tight. The boy grew up watching a man go to work, whether he felt like it or not, and understanding that this was simply what a man did. The principle is responsibility to others as the engine of a man's discipline. A man who knows people depend on him, finds effort he would never spend on himself alone. Whatever we now think about who earns, the pull of being needed is real and measurable. The fathers didn't theorize it. They got up in the dark and went, and let the boy watch. Duty was the thing that got a tired man out of bed. Number 9. Own your mistakes. When a 1960s boy broke something or messed up, the worst move was the excuse. A father wanted the truth, fast, and a boy who owned it took far less heat than the boy who lied or blamed. Say what you did, say how you will fix it, and do not do it again. This built accountability, and accountability is strangely freeing. The boy who owns his errors keeps control of the moment, because the man who makes no excuses is the man no one can corner. Leadership research is nearly unanimous. Taking responsibility is the foundation of trust. The fathers had a one-word version: no excuses, and they enforced it before the boy could spell the word. The excuse always cost more than the mistake. Number 8. Do the thing you don't feel like doing. A father in the 1960s taught that feelings are not in charge. Cold morning, hard chore, dull job. It gets done anyway, because the work doesn't care how you feel. The boy learned to act first and let the motivation catch up later, if it ever showed. This is the heart of self-discipline, the ability to split action from mood. And it's the single trait that most reliably builds a life, because everything else stacks on top of it. People who study high performers find the same thing over and over. Consistency beats intensity, and consistency is just doing it when you don't feel like it. The fathers ran no studies. They just refused to accept "I don't feel like it" as a sentence a man was allowed to finish. Motivation was a guest. Discipline was family. Number 7. Be useful to your neighbors. A 1960s boy watched his father show up. A neighbor's roof, a stalled car, a widow's lawn, the lodge hall on meeting night, the Elks, the Masons, the Rotary, the Knights of Columbus. And the boy was brought along, handed a task, and shown that a man's strength belonged partly to the people around him. The mechanism is community, the web of mutual obligation that makes a place a home. A boy who learned to show up built a net that would catch him for life, long before anyone called it networking. The scholar Robert Putnam later mapped the slow collapse of exactly this in his book, Bowling Alone. The fathers didn't read it. They just answered the door when a neighbor knocked and made sure the boy saw them do it. A man, they taught, is partly the property of his street. And if you think showing up for the neighbors was the hard part, the last 5 are where the fathers taught the things that actually separate a man from a grown-up boy. Number 5 especially, stay with me. Number 6, get back up. Every boy in the 1960s got knocked down by a bigger kid, a bad report card, a failure in front of people. And the only response a father truly respected was getting up. Not pretending it did not hurt. Getting up anyway, brushing it off, going back at it. This is resilience, and it might be the most protective trait a person can carry. The boy who learned that a fall is not the end built what researchers now call grit. The stubborn return to a goal across setbacks and years. They had no word like grit. They had a hand that reached down, pulled the boy up, and a low voice that said, "Get back in there." And the boy never forgot the feeling of being expected to rise. The fall was never the lesson. The rising was. Number 5, lead the people who count on you. As a boy grew up in the 1960s, his father handed him real responsibility for others. Watch your little brother. Run the table while I'm gone. Make the call. The boy was given the weight of being answerable for someone else's safety, in small doses, on purpose. The principle is that leadership is built, not born, and it is built by carrying responsibility before you feel ready. A boy who was trusted to lead learned to think past himself, to decide under pressure, to be the steady one when others wobbled. Today, we send executives to expensive seminars for this. The fathers handed it to a 10-year-old with a younger sibling and a simple line: "You're in charge. Don't let me down." A leader is just a boy who was trusted early. Number 4, carry your weight in silence, but know where to set it down. A 1960s father taught his son to bear hard things without dumping them on everyone around him. Pain, fear, worry, you carried it. You didn't make it the family's problem. There was real strength in that. The strength of a man who could be a steady wall for others. And here we have to be honest, because the fathers got this one both right and wrong. The discipline of not collapsing onto people is genuinely valuable. But carried too far, the silence became a cage, and a generation of men paid for it in loneliness they never named. The best version, which a few of the wisest fathers somehow taught, was this: be a wall for others, but keep one person you can be human with. Strength that can never set itself down isn't strength. It's a slow kind of suffering. They taught the boy to carry it. The wise ones also taught him where to put it down. Number 3, pass it on. The deepest thing a 1960s father taught was aimed past his own son entirely. Everything he installed so the boy could one day install it in a son of his own. The boy was not the end of the line. He was a link in it. The mechanism is generational transmission. The way a culture actually survives, not in books, but in the daily example handed from one man to the next. A boy who understood he was part of a chain behaved differently, because he wasn't just living his life, he was holding something in trust. Every lasting tradition in history has moved exactly this way. The fathers needed no telling. They simply raised the boy the way they'd want their grandson raised. He wasn't raising a son. He was raising a father. Number 2, have a code and do not break it. Beneath all the specific lessons, the 1960s father was installing one operating system, a set of lines you do not cross, no matter who is watching or what it costs. You don't lie. You don't quit on people. You don't hit the weak. You don't take what isn't yours. The particulars varied by man, but every good father had a code, and he made sure the boy felt its weight. This is integrity, literally being one whole man across every room you enter. A boy with a code had a spine. His decisions could hang on, so he did not have to renegotiate his character every time he was tempted. We would call it values-based living. They called it knowing right from wrong and having the guts to act on it. And a boy who watched his father hold the line at real cost learned more in that moment than in 1,000 sermons. A man without a code is just appetite in a suit. Number 1, become someone other people can rely on. This is the lesson underneath every other one on this list. The principle that ties the whole thing together. The handshake, the word kept, the temper held, the work done, the code unbroken. All of it was building toward a single end. A man other people could lean on and not be let down. That, in 1960, was the entire definition of a man worth being. Here's why it was the keystone. A man's character was not treated as a private feeling he kept inside. It was treated as a public structure other people actually stood on. His wife, his children, his crew, his neighbors, his word at the bank. Reliability was load-bearing. When a father in the 1960s looked at his son, the question under all the others was always the same. When the weight comes, and it always comes, will this boy hold? Everything he taught was an answer to that one question. He wasn't making the boy happy or clever or even rich. He was making him dependable because he understood something we have half forgotten. A man's life is measured by what can safely rest on him. And the highest thing anyone could say about a man, the thing those fathers were quietly building toward from the very first handshake, was the simplest sentence in the language. You can count on him. These aren't old lessons. They're the right ones. And maybe the reason so many men today feel like something was never handed down is that, for a lot of us, it wasn't. The chain skipped a link, but a chain can be picked back up by any man willing to start holding the standard again, for himself first, and then for whoever happens to be watching him next. So tell me in the comments which one of these you're going to bring back first. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.